greetings everybody. Welcome to this week's episode of the Wealth Management Series, part of the FIZ Show Season 2. Last episode we had a very, very exciting conversation, and good news is we are continuing it in this episode with the Managing Director of Carrick, Zambia, Carmen Hachandi. Carmen, how are you doing today?
I'm well, Cedric, and how are you?
I'm good. Glad to have you. And
glad to be here.
We had a very, very extensive conversation last week, and a lot of people were left hanging because there are so many gems that you dropped, especially on the residency. So maybe we could talk a bit about that one. So investing to be a resident in a country. So maybe you can go into the question of, okay, how do you identify the right countries for you to invest in? And what does Carrick do to help you identify these countries that you can invest in and become a resident?
Great question, Cedric. Yeah. Thank you so much. I love that follow-on question because now it's getting into the work that we actually do. Yeah. So now we're getting into what Carrick Wealth actually does, which is bring expertise from service providers, the ones I spoke about earlier, that we work with service providers who are experts in their field. So once I identify that what Cedric needs, the solution for investment that Cedric needs is residency or citizenship by investment, I will bring an expert who will then have this conversation with you and give you the nitty-gritties of what is required and how do we then meet that objective of yours for investment. So it's all done by experts. In terms of identifying which country it is you should be applying for, that as well is done by going through your full financial profile, understanding who Cedric is. I think you may recall this. We spoke about we need to understand who you are. What have you invested in locally? What is your family life looking like? Where would you want your children to end up and their children? And what legacy are you leaving other than the stories and the names? And in so doing, we then uncover what that need is, and we bring the expert to interface with you directly to then advise you appropriately on what that looks like for you specifically. So your choice of what it is you will invest in, where, is different from the next person, depending on each person's individual profile.
Oh, that seems to me like you take a very much a bespoke approach, meaning there's no two clients who have the same particular solution because different people have different financial profiles.
That's true.
Now, you've also mentioned that there are different asset classes people can invest in. You talked about, for example, the $1 million life cover in our previous episode, owning property on the UK as well. Now, when it comes to creating a portfolio, what is the importance of the risk tolerance of the client? Because ideally, most people already look at offshore investing as risky already. That especially in the context of our country.
Yes.
But when you sit down with someone and they just tell you, I want to become a billionaire from offshore investing, for example, they are very much a risk taker. How do you sit down with the client and sort of mitigate what risks they want to take and sort of guide them in that process of taking risks intelligently?
Okay. So risk profiling is one thing that we do, and I think you alluded to it, before we can decide what is the best fit in terms of the different asset classes and what will each asset class bring on the table in terms of returns and also managing that risk for their client. It's okay to have ambitions and goals around wanting to become very wealthy. I encourage that. You need to have a mindset of wanting to be drastically different. And that's how we'll build this lasting middle class. That's what entrepreneurs do. They go out there and take a lot of risk. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. However, the reason why you need an independent financial advisor like Carrick Wealth, which is what we do, is to be able then to manage the risk that you are taking on the investments. We'll profile you, understand your attitude to risk and your goals, what you want to achieve out of the investment. However, our role is then to say, how do we do this in a safe way, in a way in which we mitigate the risk to the client? For instance, during COVID, I think I may have mentioned this, tech stocks were doing really well. That's because everybody ran to technology. We're now in our homes. Everybody needed a laptop. You needed apps. You needed all sorts of things to be able to communicate in isolation. The tech stocks grew. And people that were heavily concentrated in the tech stocks saw a lot of growth in their investments at that point. However, as an advisor, I would not be advising a client to buy one industry or one sector of investments. Because what happens then after COVID, and these stocks have now retraced, what happens then to the portfolio you're holding? So you're carrying a lot of risk. But Cedric, you're young, you might want to take the risk. We'll find a way to compromise with you. But from an advisor's point of view, that is why our role is very important. That when you go offshore, you need to have an independent advisor, Carrick Wealth, to be able to hold your hand. Because we have experts, people who understand the markets, who've read the market, they can see past trends, they can analyze future trends, and be able to say objectively, this is how we're going to apportion the investments, and this is how we're going to allocate the asset classes. So expertise is very important, and that's what you'll be getting from Carrick Wealth.
Oh, that's really, really amazing. You mentioned the tech stocks and how they were really in a massive bull run, I must mention, during COVID. But what is Carrick Wealth's position on alternative asset classes? Things like cryptocurrencies, your Bitcoin, and the like. Is it something that you also look at if a client wants that in their portfolio? Or do you advise against them? Or do you educate them if they do not understand what these assets are?
Right. So from a Carrick Wealth perspective, our focus is preservation of capital, growth in a safe, secure environment, and diversification of investments. Whilst those asset classes can bring in good returns, and sometimes they can be very volatile, currently it's not an asset class that we are advising clients on actively. However, there may be clients who want to do it in their own capacity and have the expertise to do it. It's at the end of the day, Carrick is an advisor. I can just also give you an idea of what advisory looks like. It's like your Bashibukombe and Vanachimbusa scenario, right? Mm-hmm. They'll take you through all sorts of advice. You should do this, shouldn't do that. At the end of the day, you pick that which is progressive and will build you. And whatever you think will not build you as not progressive, you leave it. And that's what advisory is. We'll give you advice on where we feel, based on the knowledge we have, the expertise we have, where the growth asset classes are. It's up to you to then decide to take it, not to take it.
Oh, that's very, very good to know. I think you mentioned earlier that your work as Carrick Wealth, as wealth advisors, is you hold the client's hand. Now, life often can become unpredictable, and we have no control over what happens. There's so many emotions that people tie to their money, because money is very important to people. Now, how does Carrick Wealth help their clients with some emotional biases they might have and help them maintain the long-term view of their wealth preservation, of their wealth creation? Yeah, no, excellent.
Another excellent question. Yeah. So emotional biases, number one, offshore investing, you must have a long-term view to it. Markets are volatile, and if you're going to go into an offshore investment with the view that the very next day you should see gains, or if you see a loss, you're suddenly wanting to unwind your position, you will lose money. Long-term investing, and also investing in offshore markets in hard currency, dollar, pound, euro, Swiss franc, all these very strong currencies, is about the time frame of the investment. And why? Because these are very stable markets, very well-regulated markets, very deep markets. So you don't get arbitrage opportunities very easily. So what I'm trying to say is interest rates in a stable environment are more steady, more progressive than interest rates in a developing market where all sorts of events will impact the interest rates. So your 20-30% that you're used to in developing markets are as a result of the risk attributed to those environments. And in markets where it's less risky, interest rates are also less volatile and more steady. And as a result, the view must be, what am I trying to achieve? Capital preservation, number one. What is that? protecting the value of the wealth you've created from currency depreciation and inflation. So number one, capital preservation. I've put it in hard currency. I'm preserving the capital. Number two, I want some growth. Depending on your risk profile, we'll risk profile you. We have a cautious investor, we have a balanced investor, we also have a growth investor. That will determine the range of returns that will come to you as a client. Aside from that, how do we help you from not making irrational decisions or choices? We also keep you very informed. Carrick, if you follow our Carrick Wealth pages on LinkedIn and on Facebook, you will see that we have monthly updates on markets, how they're performing from our team of specialists in our asset management unit. We also have ad hoc information being shared on our pages around markets, what's going on in the world markets. But on our platforms as well, we have Carrick Concierge, which will give you reports on past performance of funds. It will give you reports on where we're seeing markets going from our experts. So there is a lot of information. But the key, as always, in long-term investing is to stay invested. Be in it for the long term. After all, we are planning for generational wealth.
Yeah, that's true. Generational wealth. Now, I think you've said you have to be ready to go long-term if you're going into offshore investing.
Yeah.
Now, let's say from the context of me being a local investor, I feel like I have built enough of a portfolio locally, and I now want to start investing offshore. It's good that you've mentioned that Carrick Wealth provides some information, but what are some of the key psychological mindsets I need to start changing in order to be able to handle offshore investing differently from local versus market investing?
Okay. Well, more or less what I've just spoken about. Long-term mindset, understand that equities are very volatile asset classes. They can gain you 40% in a day or two, lose you 20% the very next day. Hence, the entire goal of I want to achieve this must be over a long period of time. You cannot play offshore markets the way you play your local FX markets, for instance. I'm going to buy in at 8 o'clock and go and sell at 15 hours, and I've made a 2-kwacha, 3-kwacha gain. Yeah. These are long-term investments, and you must have the ability to withstand short-term market movements, volatility that will inherently occur. Over the long term, you stand to win, you stand to gain, and achieve your long-term objectives.
Wow, so essentially you sort of have to change from playing your local games to playing in the world stage, it seems. Yes. So now, when looking at offshore investing compared to local investing, some people have questions on liquidity, you know. I think it's possibly the mindset of, it's far away, it's not here, I can't touch it. Most people have the mindset of, I need to touch it, I need to feel the money. Now, what is your word for those people who have those concerns in regards to liquidity comparatively between local market investments and offshore investments? Another
brilliant question. So depending on your objectives for investment, remember I said I'm going to understand your current financial disposition. I will profile you and understand what your needs are for this investment. So if you have cash needs in the investment, then we'll give you a solution that then speaks to that need. So if out of 100% of your investment, 10% of that should be liquid investments, then we'll take you into the money market investments, where we're placing your funds on short-term 1 week, 2 week investments so that you have access to that money. We will tailor, bespoke is the word you use. So there are bespoke solutions. So if your goal and your need is liquidity for a certain portion of the funds that you're holding offshore, then that is what we'll do. We will look for a solution that then fits your need. So remember, Carrick is not holding some product that it's waiting to deploy for you to buy as an investor out there, even though it's not suiting what you want. We are going to go and make this solution for you and bring it to the table and say, you told us you want 10% of your assets to be liquid and you want the rest invested in A, B, C, D. Here's the solution. So we tailor make the solution for you. It must suit your needs.
Wow, that's very, very encouraging to know. Yeah. I think looking at also the local market, there's been the rise of village banking. people pulling together to create, if you will, sort of investment circles amongst themselves.
Yes.
Now, when you take it offshore, is it possible for people to sort of come together, almost like a village bank, to invest offshore together as well?
Another excellent question, Cedric. Today you're on fire, Cedric.
I kept ready.
Indeed.
Yeah.
Number one, your local village bank is a wealth creation strategy. I think I touched on it previously.
Yes.
Once you decide to take this offshore, this becomes like a group savings or group pension that we can set up for you offshore. We've done it for a school in Zimbabwe called Peter House. In fact, right now, we're in the process of setting up a foundation for all its students that went to this school, Peter House. We're in the process of setting up a foundation for them to contribute money towards this school that they love and cherish. And they're doing it as a group of people. Each of them has committed a certain amount of money that they'll be putting away with regards to helping that school develop, continue to maintain its standards, and as their share of the corporate social responsibility. So yes, you can, as a group of people, come together and we can find an offshore solution for you. We can do it as a pension, we can do it as a group savings. We've done it already, we have expertise. What are the goals? If it's long-term, then you're looking at capital preservation. That's why you would do it. How do you preserve the value of this village bank that you started? How do you ensure it's in a secure market? How do you ensure that you're reducing credit risk? Because individually, you're running a huge credit risk amongst yourselves. You're just one bad deal away from the whole thing crumbling. Yeah.
Wow. I think it's unfortunate. It seems we have come to the end of the program, but I think that viewers would want more. But today, we're going to stop here, and we'll continue this talk in the next episode. So I'd like to thank you very much for being part of this conversation and for giving us so much knowledge on offshore investing and wealth preservation. So thank you so much.
Always my pleasure. Happy to be here.
All right, and thank you for watching this episode of the Wealth Management Series, part of the FIZ Show, Season 2. This has been Cedric Chuuma. I was joined by Carrick Wealth Zambia Managing Director, Carmen Hachandi, and looking forward to the next episode. Get to know.